continuing lesson 78 in part 11, looking at true or false concepts in the golf swing. Is a thing true or is it false? And sometimes the answer is yes, because there's a bit of truth in both and we can't have absolutes. But most of the time we can be fairly confident, not say dogmatic, but certainly confident or black and white about certain things. We know in golf there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but that doesn't mean there aren't ideal optimum principles. And one that's been misunderstood, misused, is probably the idea that the left wrist should be flat at the top of the backswing. So if I hit my 6-iron here and load, there's a hint of cup. If I'm told to flatten that, can you see how much the club face changes and the plane? Let me do that in the horizontal swing plane. I go back, there's a hint of cup, quite natural. If I flatten it, the club drops by quite a large amount. So when you see great players like Sergio Garcia and very notably Dustin Johnson, strong grip, they go back and then the left wrist bows. Now we know that Dustin Johnson's been the #1 golfer in the world, but I've always felt that he was suspect in less than a full wedge. It's all very well being shut at the top with a full swing and readjusting, but when you're playing touch shots off bare lies the wedge, anything less than 120 yards, then exaggerated shut face is a problem. Trevino overcame it by playing everything with a fade. So, why do I state these things? Why do I say true or false? Well, it's not my idea for something to be wrong or right. Orthodoxy is based upon biomechanics and ballistics. It's a science. Maybe an art in how you use it or an art in how you teach it, but whatever a teacher is giving you, he should be able to back it up ballistically and in terms of physiology and so on. If we go back to our optimum parallel left thumb, we can see here there is a hint of cup. The simple act of cocking the wrist increases that by a small amount. Then my forearm rotates and I go to the top. There's a hint of cup here. I haven't actually done that consciously, but that extra bit of cupping is a byproduct of wrist cock. What is interesting is, if I go wrist hinge, there is a lot of cup, rotate the forearms and turn. To flatten that is a big change. Sergio Garcia, very much like that. Club dropped and then he went in. And yet, he's one of the greatest strikers of a golf ball in the world, particularly with his irons. He knows how that works. What is interesting to me is, if I make a swing with no wrist hinge, in other words, I just rotate the forearms, make a shoulder, can you see that that hasn't cupped very much? It's a strange thing, but when you cock the wrist and rotate the forearm, it's a mixture. So what happens when you mix red and yellow paint? You get the colour orange. You get a third reaction. So if you're just shoulder and forearm, the back of the left wrist is really quite flat. However, if you roll the forearm and hinge your wrist, there's more wrist cup. So don't go messing about with it. It's going to vary according to the club that you're using and the shot that you're hitting. If you're hitting a low shot, I wouldn't see much cup. However, if you're hitting a high shot, I would. Turn sideways. Low shot, not much cup. High shot, more cup. I'm still in the same plane. So whether the wrist is cupped or not, in that motion, I'm in plane. The danger is going back with cup and then flattening it. You get all sorts of change of direction. So it's very common. I remember sitting on the 7th tee at Augusta, probably only 30 feet away from where the players were playing, and I sat there for 2 or 3 hours and I watched all the best players in the world come past me. I could hear the conversation with the caddy and they all hit a shot. And what was patently obvious is that 99% of the field played golf with a grip that was stronger than neutral. The only neutral grip I saw in that whole 3-hour period at Augusta was Rory McIlroy and Tiger. They're the only ones that played off an absolutely neutral left thumb and left hand. So as a teacher, you've got to pick and mix. You can't be too dogmatic about certain areas. I could say true or false. Should the wrist be flat at the top? Well, false if that is applied to every club, because the club drops out of plane. What we can say is the wedge will have a lot of cup and the driver will have very little. You don't have to worry about it. The length of the club and again the shoulder turn will dictate what happens. So don't impose wrist cup on a driver or impose a flat wrist to the wedge, it won't work. You can be cupped with the wedge and flattish the driver. There's a cone of movement, but it varies, as I just said, it varies because of your body and the length of the club that you're using. So if I hit your 6-iron now, I'm going to hit you a shot with no wrist hinge, and you'll see quite a simple left wrist. So this is a low shot, no wrist hinge. Okay, see it's drilled in nice and low while I pulled at a fraction. I'm now going to add wrist hinge into a high shot, same club, but I'm going to hinge the wrist. Look, it's changed, isn't it? You see, as you cock the wrists, you get cup. It's a disaster to flatten it, because then you've got to change direction and you're fighting the loft of the club all the time. But I'll hit you a high one. This is wrist hinge. Hit it higher with a bit of fade, but if you stop that in slow motion, you'll see that the low shot was there, fairly flat, and the high shot was cupped. Don't impose unnatural movements on things that nature wants to do anyway.